Roots and Rigour, Rigour and Flow. Roots and Rigour, Rigour and Flow. Roots and Rigour, Rigour and Flow. Rigour and Flow.
One. Welcome to Rigour and Flow with me, Aiwan.
And me, Amanda. And it's the show where business meets love.
And culture meets critique. This is the Feedwarmer edition.
Our very first one.
Our very first Feedwarmer edition. And what it is a way to keep your ears and minds warm as we get ready to launch season 2.
Yes, indeed. And in each Feedwarmer, we are bringing a show we liked, something that stimulated us, something that's provoked our thoughts. And this time it is Aiwan's turn. So what are you bringing to keep the feed warm today?
So it's an episode from a show called the Pursuit Playbook podcast, created and hosted by Aprileen Alexander. And it's an AiAi Studios production. And I was the exec producer on this one.
Nice. And how did you first meet Aprileen? How did she become a client?
So Aprileen worked in the finance department of a magazine called gal-dem.
Oh, the famous
I know,
gal-dem.
we love gal-dem.
That was a iconic organisation.
It really was. They were an iconic Black British publication whose remit was to share the perspectives of people of colour from marginalised genders. And the other part of their remit was to change the journalistic landscape because it's 94% white and 55% male. And what gal-dem did was basically introduce the UK, the world, to a whole host of Black women and women of colour and non-binary people into the journalistic space, you know? So they were brilliant. So Aprileen worked in their finance department. AiAi Studios produced all of the podcasts for gal-dem magazine.
That bit I knew. Yes. Very impressive.
Yeah, so the flagship show, Growing Up with gal-dem, Reclaimed and Rewritten, Our Place is Here, Move Out Loud, like so many shows that we produced for them. And it was really sad when they closed their doors in 2023.
Yeah. Oh, watching that happen, you were gutted and it was hard to watch.
Listen, I don't feel like that vacuum has been filled actually since they left. But that's how me and Aprileen met.
Nice. And how did you first start talking to Aprileen and what was her idea for the show?
So she was really clear when she came to us with the idea for the show. She wanted to highlight the stories and trajectories of Black women and women of colour at the highest levels of the corporate and business space.
Okay, so
because we don't often hear them.
Yes.
So it's a business podcast, essentially.
How did the format come together? And was there anything that surprised you about working on the show with her?
When she came to us, I realised having our sort of client meeting where we really sort of get in there in the research and development, like what is this show trying to do? What is the goal of this show? Who are we talking to? What does it want to say? And it quickly became apparent that we wanted to create a playbook for Black women and women of colour entering those corporate spaces, which can be quite hostile to people like us, and to give them the tools to learn, grow, and build confidence as they enter those spaces. And also, if they're already in those spaces, to know that they're not alone.
Yeah, that sounds massively important because, I feel like I've heard so many stories from women studying race in the workplace where people feel like they're the only one, they're invisible, they're alone. So I can imagine just having that in your ears on the way to work, on the way back from work must be very comforting and so needed. Yeah,
you're right there. It actually became my go-to for tips, tricks and advice as I navigate a business environment that, as we've discussed about in our show, it is quite difficult navigating it as a Black woman. So I picked up a lot. Some of these women all of them are powerhouses. They
imagine.
Really are. These are women who are senior partners in global law firms. They're women who've built 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure businesses. These are women who are leading some of the biggest departments and organizations in the world, you know. And I didn't even know that they existed.
Yeah, super cool. So what are you choosing for the Feedwarmer today? What are you going to share?
So this episode is called From the C-Suite, Risking It All with Shani Gonzales.
Oh, Shani Gonzales. She is Shani Gonzales.
Listen, the way I love that woman. So Shani is the Executive Vice President and Managing Director at Warner Chappell Music UK.
Yeah.
And they are the world's biggest publishing company. And she runs the UK arm of it.
Wow.
She is exactly, wow. I mean, the budgets that she's in control of are like hundreds of millions of pounds. When I look at my little
I want to be Shani when I grow up.
Listen, when I look at my little Monzo account, I think of Shani and I say, one day.
One day.
But so Shani is, she's incredible. She is American, Trinidadian, Jamaican.
Okay.
And she has built an incredible career in the music industry. You and I have both worked in the music industry. Music is my first love.
Yeah.
Like, it's the core of all that I am, from songwriting to producing to sound engineering. I love it all. It really is my foundation. So hearing from a woman like Shani, because prior to her, the only black woman I'd heard of at the highest levels of the music industry was Sylvia Robinson, who formed the iconic rap group Sugar Hill Gang and got them their first record. And so to know that a Shani Gonzales existed at this level.
In the UK.
Exactly. There's one thing in America where they're more populous, African Americans are more populous than we are here in the UK. So when Aprileen said that Shani is a possible for the guest list, I was like, hell yeah.
Okay.
Like,
it was a no-brainer.
Get it done, and let's get it done now.
I can actually imagine your excitement.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Shani has discovered, developed and launched some of the biggest artists globally.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber.
Yeah. Oh,
Stormzy.
Wow.
DJ Khaled. Central C, Labyrinth, who did all the music for Euphoria and is also responsible for that classic hit from back in the day, Tiny Temper, Pass Out.
Oh God, that was a banger.
It was played everywhere, you know.
That was like, wow, I remember that coming out.
This is it, you know. She's not a joke at all. And I think the other thing I really love about Shani is her unapologetic focus on diversity in the talent that she looks for, the way she looks for talent, and then bringing them onto her roster and taking them to the highest heights in an industry that is still, unfortunately, still very, very white.
Yeah. Despite it like being black culture all the time, that's like taste making and at the forefront.
We are the backs on which whole industries are built, and we never get the props or the financial remuneration. How do you say that word?
Remuneration. I always struggle with it. Remuneration. It's always remuneration. I used to think it was remuneration, but it's remuneration.
Yeah. So what struck me the most about Shani is the way she moves, not just in terms of diversity, but it's almost like she has, well, I know she has a supreme belief in her gut instinct, because she saw the potential, for example, in Justin Bieber before the fame, before anybody knew who he was. He was just this kid on YouTube, you know.
Yes, I remember seeing things that hark back to that era. Yeah. Long before I knew of Shani Gonzales, and that she was the one that kind of presumably found him.
Absolutely. So she believed before anyone else did and followed through on that belief to success.
Yeah.
So I really like that, because in a world that wants to make women doubt themselves, not pay attention to their gut intuition, I feel like having a woman like Shani who's like, no, I believe this, might seem crazy, but I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to do whatever it is to achieve what my gut is telling me is the right thing.
And I can see how that would have been such a powerful example for you, because even when I watch the way you make decisions in business, you so often fall on your gut. And when you come to me, you really come to me for a gut check.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you have to trust that. So the fact that someone who's done it to the level she has is there in this playbook type episode, speaking to that presumably, is huge.
I absolutely wouldn't be where I am with AiAi Studios and in my career if I hadn't paid attention to my gut. The amount of times I've had to pivot because I was like, I feel like things are shifting in a way, and it doesn't look like it on the surface, but I'm getting this feeling.
feel.
And then I make the pivot, and then a year later, the thing that I pivoted from has been completely
decimated.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've seen it and I've heard it. I've watched you do it. This gut sense that something in the landscape's going off. I need to move before that becomes calamitous.
Exactly. What she's doing is really a masterclass in balancing instinct with strategic risk. For me, I think that's exactly what Rigour Flow is. We've taken a lot of risks in doing this show. We've
put a lot out there.
We've trod a fine line with this show. I know some people watching our show will be like, that's not professional.
It's true. There's some people will say, don't do that. We'll alienate people.
Exactly. But we're choosing to stay true to who we are and take those strategic risks. So yeah, she's definitely an inspiration for me. And so the first excerpt I want to put to the
Feedwarmer.
To the Feedwarmer. We've got Shani talking about her early years and her sort of first inklings that she might want a career in the music industry.
So my mother's Jamaican. My dad is from Trinidad. I grew up with he thinks so too. But I grew up with just loads of that in my house. Everything from Sparrow to Bob Marley to Dennis Brown to Uncle Crazy, who randomly I was listening to his music on the way here.
He was really called Uncle Crazy.
He was called Uncle Crazy.
Yes, Uncle Crazy is a prolific and really, really important Trinidadian musician. You interned for Diana.
Yeah.
You sound as though you, like most Caribbean children, grew up with music in the house playing over and over again. So you already had like a base for love of music.
Yeah, and you know what? To even go back a bit, when I was in high school, I had a cousin who worked at Vibe magazine. I always talk about her in these things, but she was like my cool older cousin, and she worked at Vibe, and she would come back and tell me about all the different people. Diddy was in the office. I think he was Puffy then, but this person was in, and Jodeci, who I was like obsessed with in elementary school and early junior high. She would tell me about these different people that were working, that she saw while she worked at Vibe, and would explain to me like, you can be in the music business even if you don't have any talent. And that was like, I had no talent. My mother could have told me that. But she was the thing that maybe sparked that interest. And I started to understand that Puffy worked for Andre Harrell, and he helped with Mary J. Blige's album, and just starting to like have some low level understanding of what an A&R person did. I thought that perhaps I would want to work in the music business, maybe in marketing or doing something like that. But then I also really love to write. And, the other part when you grow up with like West Indian parents is that they want you to do something sensible. And I think at that point, it didn't make enough sense, even in my head, for me to explain I was going to go to school and work in the music business. Being a writer was bad enough, but I'm sure they thought I would go to law school, which I'd also played with. I wanted to do everything.
I wanted to be a backup dancer for Janet Jackson.
I wanted to be a bus driver.
What?
When I was young, I would tell my father the crazy things I wanted to be, and he would be like, "You should be a physicist." And I'd be like, "What? What does that even mean?"
I think that they just pick the most like important thing that they hear, and then they bring it home and they go like, "You're gonna do this." But we're grateful.
Yeah, we are grateful.
What do you think listening to that back?
I can see a lot of parallels between her life and mine in the sense that I come from an African household. She came from a Caribbean one. The expectation is that you follow the safe, sensible path that will lead to secure income and a long income and a solid retirement. I had the same encouragement to go into something, doctor, lawyer, that sort of thing. Me wanting to do music was like, what is that?
What?
Are you wanting to be...
That's a hobby.
Yeah, that's a hobby. You're going to waste your life and become useless. A lot of synergies there between our two lives. And I think the other thing I liked is that she grew up surrounded by music.
Yeah.
And whilst I didn't grow up with secular music, because I wasn't allowed to, the music in the church shaped all of my understanding of music. The kind of rhythms I like, the way it can move you to your core, and just falling in love with music.
Yeah.
So the next excerpt is Shani talking about her beginnings in the music industry and the important figures that shaped her understanding of the music industry and guided her through it. And there's a really iconic person in there, L.A. Reid, that she talks about. So yeah, listen to this excerpt.
I was the little sister to many big brothers who did an amazing job taking care of me. Even if we were the same age, they were all my big brothers because they came in with far more confidence and far more success than I had. And I got to learn in that, like, going into a label in that way, in a much different way than splitting my time between publishing and records like I had done in the Warner system. So it was incredible. I don't think LA really wanted me at that point. I think Chris, who was my boss from Warner, fought for me to come there with him. Not I think. I know Chris fought for me to come with him. And so he gave me, a project. It was maybe not the coolest project in the building when we think of Def Jam at that time.
Tell people what the project.
Well, we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
But it was not like the coolest project when you think about all the different people
that you just pulled out. Yeah.
And it was kind of like, just give her that to do. And, I got very lucky because that project was Justin Bieber. So I got to do Justin Bieber for the first 5 albums, maybe 5.5 albums, because I didn't finish the last thing we were working on. But, at that point, Chris and I had such a good working relationship. It had been maybe 4 years of working together, and I had grown from his assistant. So he gave me a lot of autonomy. Maybe it's from all the years of being in studios and doing late nights, but I really I come alive at night. It's really inconvenient when you have early morning meetings or the gym, which is my new recent thing. And every morning I'm going to the gym and I'm like walking there like cursing life. I'm like, fuck. Gotta go to the gym. I should have went to bed before 3 a.m. or whatever ridiculous time. It works for me, and it probably seems insane to other people. And I just know when to stop and take a breath. Well, I don't actually always know when, but
No, you
on the
don't.
weekends, I probably sleep much more than I should. But, I don't feel guilty at all.
I've heard that you are different in the sense that you are in the studio with the artists. Why do that?
I just love it. I think it's like if you work at a car factory in the accounting department, don't you want to see the cars to understand what the hell you're working for?
I would, but some other people wouldn't. I would. I'd want to know, like, when I get an invoice in, what it relates to.
Yeah, I think creatives are the most fascinating people. I've said this about 40 times. I hope I don't get canceled from this podcast. But with talent comes like weird and disheveled and misunderstood. And I don't know, those are probably not the right words, but they're just the best people to me, that you're drawing on your experiences to make art. I find that to be the most exhilarating part of my job when you're in the studio with like a young songwriter or a young artist or any artist really, and you're watching things connect. I could never touch buttons and make music come out of that. I could never string words together and make the song that you'll dance to at your wedding. I think it's like watching a magic trick. I don't know how they do it. It's something I could never do. So it's really fascinating to watch. I mean, and I'm not always welcome in the studio. Sometimes I go, and really that lyric? I don't know. But you develop relationships with people that way. It's so much easier to work together when you build trust. And I think building trust comes with understanding what they do in the studio and their process and how it all comes together. You get to learn a lot about people watching the way they work. And so for them, where they work is in the studio. It's where the
That's
magic
where you
happens.
go.
Yeah, it's where the magic happens.
I think what I admire about her in the company of someone like an L.A. Reid, who was literally one of the most iconic producer execs at the time. I mean, even now he's on music shows. Like, imagine being in a room with that guy who's at the height of his powers. You're a black woman. There probably aren't that many around as role models. And you're getting the feeling that he doesn't actually want you there.
Oh, yeah, that's just
Resilience, right?
That?
This is it. Like the amount of resilience and strength it takes to still insist that you have a right to be in that space.
Yeah. You still deserve your seat at your table.
Exactly. It's crazy. This next one, though, is my favorite moment in the episode. It's where she talks about discovering Justin Bieber and Travis Scott, who've gone on to become like global superstars. And I think it really answers that question that we spoke about towards the top, which is, what does it look like to bet on something or someone before the world sees it?
Yeah, that's the gut intuition.
There you go. This is the excerpt.
With that project, obviously he was very much involved, but trusted me, and so it was awesome. And very quickly went from like maybe not the coolest project in the building to being full-fledged Bieber fever. It was full-fledged Bieber fever, and it was like insane. Like, I think back on it now, and it's hard to have that much fun when you're in it, and it's hard to have the perspective while you're in it. But I mean, it was insane. It was absolutely incredible. I was always a bit tired because we did like 5 albums in 2 years, just about. He was always recording. He was always on the road. There was always things happening. So in it, it just feels like chaos and like constant. And somebody let me get some sleep. But it was an incredible thing to be a part of.
It sounds as though like you had such an amazing breeding ground or testing ground for your experience. And you've worked with the grades and you helped launch a grade. So if you started your career now, do you think the time has changed? Like that time?
I mean, my big philosophy in life is God takes care of children and fools. I never, that's like my mantra that I live by. Like, I never can figure out which one I am, probably a fool or a child or both, depending on what day of the week it is. It's always interesting when you're living through something, you don't always have the perspective. But I look at the things I learned with Craig Kalman and L.A. Reid and Chris Hicks and Deanna Williams. And I'm like, when will I ever be smart enough to guide someone else? Like, I don't know. I'm insanely grateful. Where like every day I wake up and I'm like, fuck it, it's Tuesday. Let's try again. I'm like, I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. Because I still remember, even with Justin Bieber, how many people told me it was never going to work. He's a white boy from some weird town in Canada, and he's a kid, and what is he doing? And this is not going to work. And I'm like, I had already been familiar with him because I'd followed his early YouTubes. And I was too stupid at that point to know that he maybe wasn't the coolest thing in the building. I always thought he was going to be the biggest and the coolest because I'm just as delusional and crazy, right? So, later on, I went with LA to Sony, and he was at Epic. I was at Epic with him. The next thing I signed, I remember being so resolved. Everybody told me it was not going to work. And I won't name names because now those same people all pretend that they knew from the beginning. But, this guy is a weirdo, and what are you doing? And I remember thinking, this is going to be the biggest artist in the world. And that was Travis Scott. So I think, it takes a fair amount of fuck what everyone else is saying. This is what I'm standing on this hill by myself. Fuck it then. It's just going to be, and very quickly people started to turn around and go, oh no, he's weird, but that's what makes him great. Yeah, I think, did I answer what I do?
But yes, but also I want to just stay on that point for a second. I think that you do that really well, because sometimes you have these conversations and you're like, yeah, I believe in it. You're willing to stand on that hill by yourself because your gut, your intuition, your experience tells you that this is the right choice to make. So how do you go about, explaining to a guy or trying to convince somebody else that this is it? Like, I'm out here on a limb, but
Yeah, I mean, guys in A&R by trade also. And I think that when you work in the music business, you get used to psychotic A&R people. You do. Now that I have, I have to look at an entire company. My A&R team still are the people that drive me the most crazy. But if they're not driving me crazy, they're not doing their job. So I'm on the side going, I don't fucking get it. And they're like, you'll get it soon. And that's really all they can say.
yeah.
I don't think that thing in you as an A&R person, when I came up through A&R, ever goes away. So there's sometimes that I see it, and sometimes I could just, I don't know, like you see the passion or the determination in the A&R's eyes, like.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
The amount of artists that she's brought into the public domain.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
This last excerpt is where Shani speaks about mentorship and legacy. I really love this. This gives me all the feels.
Aww.
Because in it she talks about the mentors that helped her and inspired her. Mm-hmm. And she talks about what she wants to see for young Black women coming up after her and going into the future.
Yeah.
And it's just powerful what she has to say.
And then you graduate, and what's the first job that you got?
While I was in Philly, I was interning for this woman, Deanna Williams, who was extraordinary. She started out as a radio broadcaster, and then she got really into, I guess, sort of the earliest form of what DEI in the music business was. But was very influential, I think, on that side of the music industry. Eventually, she wrote June into law as Black Music Month. She had this whole exercise of doing that, and she started and ran a foundation called IAM, which is the International Association of African American Music. So she just had a very big and impactful voice. For me, interning with her so early on, I really didn't grow up listening to the OJs or Teddy Pendergrass or all the different massive and influential artists that came through the sound of Philadelphia and Philly International. So having that experience with Deanna was really cool. She taught me about Black American music and what became American pop music, the foundation of today's music, really. I grew up I'm first generation American, so the first Luther Vandross song I heard, I thought it was Sanchez or Barris Hammond. I was like, who is this? Did he take a Sanchez song? And they're like, oh my God, it's Luther Vandross and this is his song. I was like, shit, okay, cool. This version's cool too.
I think for context, people need to hear that in the Caribbean, it is just totally abnormal to rock up somewhere and hear a song, and it's a song that they've remastered.
Jamaicans love a cover.
Yeah.
That's just the way to put it really easily. Jamaicans love a cover. So even now, there are songs that I'll hear and I'll go, no, that's not original either, and be devastated. I guess the biggest leadership lesson I've learned is it's hard, but you have to try to be present equally for everyone. And that's still something that I'm not always good at. And being flexible, making sure that your team have room to speak and engage and tell the truth. For me, the truth is the most important thing because, again, when you self-admittedly are not the expert in every single thing and you know you're new in your role and you're growing, what you want are people to tell you the truth. And so making sure that I create a comfortable environment for people to feel like they can truly come to me is really important.
Do you sometimes sit in the fourth floor of your office and just in your lovely couch and your lovely 2 chairs and your art on the wall? And do you sometimes look out the window and go like, bitch, I run this company? Do you?
It doesn't happen that way. What happens is when 12 people are coming to me for answers and I'm thinking, what the fuck? And then usually in that moment, I don't feel like I run the company alone, right? Like I genuinely don't feel that way. I feel like I have so many people supporting me to be there and so many, again, the experts and the senior team. And it's cool. And there are moments that I'm like, wow, fuck, I can't believe I'm here. But yeah, it's usually when there's like 12 fires at one time and I'm going, oh my God, figure it out yourself. And then I have to go, oh, no, wait, I have to figure this out. Shit, what do I do? Okay, what if we try this? So those are the moments. It's those moments.
Yeah, so that's those are my clips on Shani Gonzales. This episode is so rich with inspiration and practical insights for people navigating legacy institutions and systems while building new value in creative economies.
I have to say also, we have to give massive props to Aprileen
Oh,
for
yeah.
convening this like incredible set of women and people into this kind of conversation so that people like us can listen to it,
Absolutely.
And you for producing the Pursuit Playbook as well. Obviously, you did a great job.
Oh, we did. The team did, I have to say. I'm really proud of the team, AiAi Studios. So that was an AiAi Studios production. And you can listen to the full episode wherever you get your podcasts. And the show is called The Pursuit Playbook and is hosted by the incredible Aprileen Alexander, who is a finance powerhouse in her own right.
Indeed. We'll link to the show in the show notes. So please do follow through and listen to it in full if you like.
Thank you.